welcome to Asake Online. My name is Zenzele Ndebele, and this is the Breakfast Club. Thank you for tuning in. Every day we bring you different stories, different programs where we go to the communities and talk to people. But sometimes we also, sit online, and because of the Facebook, I would nearly say because of Facebook, because of lockdown, we really have been talking to various people online. What I find interesting, or the bad side of, or the good side about COVID, is that it has allowed us to, think outside the box. Ordinarily, we'll go into the communities and interview people, but now we can just go online and connect to most of the people globally. So that has allowed us to widen our network when it comes to who we can talk to, and it gives us an option to really interact with different people. Today in my program, I'll be talking to Keith Silika. He's, I was asking him whether I should call him doctor or Keith or a PhD student, but he just told me that he passed his PhD. So congratulations on your PhD.
Thank you for having me, Zenzele. It's a pleasure to meet you as well.
Yeah, Keith is he deals with forensics and archaeology, and we'll be talking to him about his work, his experiences, and his plans. What is it that has really made him to venture into this field? Because it's one of those areas where, in Zimbabwe, it's not easy to deal with such kind of programs or topics. And I want to find out from him, a wide range of issues around these issues of forensics, because not so many people talk about them, and not so many people have experience as well and contextual background on what is happening, because Zimbabwe is quite a funny place when it comes to these issues. Keith, maybe my first question to you is briefly tell us about your early childhood. How was it like?
Oh, my early childhood was a typical one in Zimbabwe. I was born in Harare. My mother's from the Midlands, my father's from Masonia Central. So I grew up in Harare. I've got a story out there that when I was supposed to meet one of my friends in Southerton, Harare, when I was 6 years old, and he was killed via a grenade that had been left during the Liberation War. So this story of explosions are still happening today. I think there was a story about 2 weeks ago about 2 children who passed away when they handled a hand grenade. So yeah, I grew up in Harare, and when I was very young, 19, 20, I joined the police in Zimbabwe, and I've served most of my time with the PPU. Then I moved from Zimbabwe to England. I came here, joined the police, and started having an interest in forensics. I also read the Gukuraundi story when I started my undergraduate degree, and I did not know the extent to which people have been killed in Matabele, and they continue to be killed now, being these abductions, etc., disappearances. So that stimulated my interest. I also had the fortunate experience of working for the International Commission for the Location of Victim Remains in Ireland, whereby we go and search for people who are missing in Ireland using cadaver dogs. So, and also my police background and my PhD in forensics and my master's in forensics. So all those elements have molded the person that I am today in terms of forensics.
Yeah, you mentioned your early days in Zimbabwe as a police officer, and you have really of late written a lot about Gukuraundi. So my interest would be, in the police force, or growing up in Zimbabwe, did you know anything about Gukuraundi? Do you have an idea of what had happened?
It's a very interesting story that I did not know, because most people from Harare did not know at that time, because the CCJP report came in '97. That was the most formative book in regards to Gukuraundi. It came in '97. I joined the police in '98, and it wasn't available at that time. As you know, the book was banned everywhere. You couldn't know anything about Gukuraundi. But it happens when I was doing training, when I was with my colleague, who was from Blawayo, and there's this sergeant during training at Morris Depot. He was very, very harsh to him. This gentleman, my friend of mine, was my partner in my cubicle at Morris Depot. He used to say to me, Keith, Omuye my 5th Brigade. I was like, what do you mean? I don't understand. And he kept saying it, because he was being targeted by this sergeant. And then he started explaining, people were killed. Really? It's like, how come nobody know about this? Like, yeah, but we asked everybody. So he told me briefly the story. That's my kind of my initial information around Gukura only, but it wasn't detailed to as much as I know now.
Yeah, you serve in the police, and definitely that is one of the areas where you really get experience, and you actually talk about being in the PPU. What makes you leave the police and say, no, I think I want something else?
Oh, definitely poverty. Even by that time I was in the police, the Zimbabwe dollar we were earning thousands of Zimbabwe dollars that don't mean anything. Also, I had an opportunity to come abroad, to make myself better, because I wanted to go to university and everything else. I couldn't afford it in Zimbabwe, so I wanted just a better life, and that's why I left.
One of the, I mean, the Zimbabwean police have always been, they'll beat up people whenever there's violence and all those kind of things. So we have nice guys in the police, but we have, I think the majority are bad guys. So in your time in the police force, were you also as bad as the guys that we see these days?
I was unfortunate. I tell the story how, police training is basically 5% of it is about torture. When I joined the police, you run around with log on your head, you'll be rolling around, you'll be beating underneath the feet. All the things that we see in the police in Zimbabwe doing to citizens is what happens to them. I think I'm not familiar with their training now, but when I trained, all the things that you see happening on the streets are the same thing that happen to police officers when they do their training. So for me, fortunately, I saved most of my time with the police protection unit, looking after VIPs, the vice president. So I've looked in my time, I've saw everybody, except the current president. I did not have any duties with him, but I've looked after everyone from Mengistu to Jonathan Moyo to Chen Chimtengwe, and then some of the judges. I've been to their houses and everything else. So I wasn't forefront. I was fortunate enough. I was on the forefront. I just dealt with VIPs most of my service.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that you at one point you looked after Mengistu. Tell us about that. What kind of a person is he? We've had a lot of talk about Mengistu, but I don't know the last time I saw a current picture of Mengistu.
Yeah, he's because at that time there's less information. Even right now, I was just a young man, age 20. I'll come in the morning, operation sheet, operation order. Oh, Keith, you're going to Mengistu. You would not know who Mengistu. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what he's done. I just know he was a president of another country, would come to live in Zimbabwe. So you just go there, go to his house, you see him, he says hello to you, sometimes he makes a cup of tea for you. Very ordinary things. You would not think it. He was very, very ordinary. There was nothing that would suggest anything that's evil about him. Zero. You just think it's just another person. He conversed with you nicely in English. That's it. He didn't talk much. Him and his children, they didn't talk much, but it was very normal.
So at what point do you then hear that the guy that you are looking after is one of the people who committed serious genocides in Ethiopia?
I didn't know anything up until I came to England, because access to books, information. Remember that time, I think I had a Nokia 2110, no internet. So I didn't know. It's when I came here, it's even last week I was reflecting that Zimbabwe is looking after one of the people who committed genocide in Ethiopia. I was reflecting that I met the guy and I saw him, and he made me a cup of tea, and I did not know nothing.
So you drank Mengistu's tea. I mean, that's
unfortunately, yes. I also drink loads of teas with judges and other ministers. I've been around their parties, ZANU-PF parties and everything else, and it's very interesting to see things on the inside. They're ordinary people, but some of them do evil things, basically.
So then you've moved. You come to the UK. You join the police. I mean, what's the differences that you see between the way the Zimbabwean police do things and the way the British police do things?
I would say, like, Zimbabwe Republic police is by force. British police by consent. They have to have the consent of the public to do most of the things that they do. In terms of training, completely different training. There's no torture. There's no this running around. You know, we used to run like 10 kilometers 4 days a week, swim swim about a K a day or something, you know. And but over here in England, policing is by consent, which means there's loads of paperwork. You have to know the law. You know, there's no running. You have to know the contemporary approaches to police investigation. In Zimbabwe, I would say at that time when I did my training, it was very, very poor. It's very militaristic, quasi-militaristic approach to policing. You know, you don't understand, you don't have the connection with the public. You need to understand the public. You need to understand what type of criminals. You need to understand the law. You need to respect the public. It's more customer-based rather than forceful-based, as in the case of Zimbabwe.
The Zimbabweans always, have this way of saying that the police are more biased. They will support ZANU-PF compared to the others. Is it by training, or is just something that the culture that is developed within the people, or the police force, so to speak?
Very interesting. Police culture exists in any part of the world. We've seen it in America, seen it in Zimbabwe, Belarus, and also in England. England, there's a certain police culture. In Zimbabwe, in terms of ZANU-PF, I'll tell you, because our trainers were, I suspect a couple of our trainers, I think, were former 5th Brigade members. And most of them were ZANU-PF type. So as soon as when I was at Morris Depot, to say, you know, Pambelele ZANU, it was taught to you straight away, you know, even if you didn't like ZANU-PF, you would just say Pambelele ZANU-PF. So they're very pro ZANU. So you are forced to. I remember when I finished my training and I did not know anything about. I wasn't a big political person. I bought the Daily News once, and you can imagine I was in a VIP vehicle, Santana. You know, we were going to pick up somebody, and I was holding a Daily News in the back. And one of my bosses, a chief inspector, saw me with the Daily newspaper. And I was brought back to the office to be grilled. Why am I reading Daily News? I was like, I just saw it on the roadside. And I thought, he's got a Herald. And I thought, we'll swap later on. I got in trouble over that. But one of the bosses surprised me. He said to me, Keith, when you get that little paper, hide it. And when you finish, can I have a look as well? You know, so it wasn't like, we're forced to support ZANU-PF, but there were people who did not like ZANU-PF. I was one of them quite early on. You know, through reading the Daily News and understanding the political dynamics of Zimbabwe, rather than being told the same story by Herald. You know, that's why some people lack information, because we were force-faced propaganda by one paper for decades.
Your study, mostly you're focused on the forensics, you know, and on mass graves. What have you learned from you by just doing your PhD in this issue of forensics and archaeology?
Yeah, I was very interested because, as you know, there was over 20,000 people were killed in the Matabeleland province between 1980 and 1987. And I was reading that, like, how many books are there about Gukurahundi? And when I started, there's now mostly maybe 2. There's there's 3. There's the Wages of War that came out in 1986. There's the CCJP report that came in 1997. And then maybe to some extent, there's Stuart Doran, who brought his book in 2016, and there's David Coulter. So there's no books. And also I looked like, how many theses are there? How many PhD theses are there on Gukurahundi? There's mostly maybe another 4 or 5. And I wanted also to I wanted to find out, where are these people killed? Where can they be found? And how can we do to help surviving victims and families? So that's the reason why I pursued that project, because there was a gap in knowledge and there was opportunity for me to do it.
And during your study, I mean, what can you say is one thing that you find that stands out for you when you read about Gukurahundi, or you study about Gukurahundi in the mass graves?
Well, the interesting thing is that Zimbabwe mass graves are located in plain sight, because over the years, there's been several types of mass graves pertaining to Gukurahundi and also other episodes of violence. So there are mass graves at airports, there are mass graves at schools. These are mass graves that anybody can find publicity if you look for them. There are mass graves in former government institutions, and also there are mass graves in at campsites, as you know, Balagwe, etc. And also the most interesting thing that I found is most people think mass graves pertaining to Gukurahundi are only found in Matabeleland provinces. Mass graves pertaining to Gukurahundi are also found in Mashonaland provinces. To illustrate that case, if you remember the case of the Fallen Heroes Trust versus Zipra Trust, High Court case 880 of 2011, there was an exhumation of human remains in Chibondo in Mount Darwin, whereby the Fallen Heroes Trust exhumed over 600 human remains in Mashonaland. Zipra successfully applied to the court, and the court gave them, found them in their favor to stop the exhumation. Because as you remember, as you know, there were about 20 assembly points to which both Zipra and Zana used to have to report to. So they were not based in Matabele only, but they were based in also in Mashonaland provinces. And a lot of Zipra cadres, as you know, by the letters by John Como, even in John Como's group, the Zipra cadres were disappearing in the Mashonaland provinces. So I was curious to find out where are they? So they are hidden in plain sight. And and the actions of the Fallen Heroes Trust, as you're aware, they've been exhuming human remains for the past 30 years in Zimbabwe. And according to their statements in the Herald and everywhere else, they claim to have exhumed over 6,000 human remains around the country. So how do they identify those people, and how do they assign them? They always sing the one tune that those human remains belong to the Liberation War. But the evidence, the forensic evidence, in terms of the type of the state of the body, the clothing, the equipment that the human remains have, points to a different story. So if your listeners and readers are very interested in to know the context of human remains in Zimbabwe, I encourage them to look at that. That case is available online. It sums up the devious methods of another layer of hiding the atrocities that have been committed, mainly by ZANU-PF. We don't want to mince that words. So yeah, that's one of the few interesting things that I found. The locations and what they're doing, what some of the things that have been done by the state presently.
Yeah, there have been some number of organizations that have been working over these issues over the years and documenting. So have you had a chance or opportunity to actually talk to some of the community-based organizations in Zimbabwe who are working on these issues?
Oh yes, as you know, like Shari, Shari Apple, she does fantastic work with the Ukutula Trust in terms of humanitarian forensics, and so that's very important, because her work is forensically apt, because she's got forensic training, and a few of her colleagues they've got forensic training. However, what I would like in future is to streamline the process, rather than having people in small communities exhuming here and there. I'll give you an example. Like Zimbabwe does not have a missing person database. The missing person database for Zimbabwe contains, as of last week when I checked, there's 6 people. Yeah, 6 people. And we know that there are thousands and thousands of people who were killed. We don't know whether. Even Itai Dzamara is not there on that missing person list. So it will be useful if we have a streamlined process whereby First of all, we need a holistic approach to Gukurahundi, which can encompass historians, forensic people, anthropologists, crime scene people, and victim groups to come together. And I was fortunate enough yesterday. I had a meeting with the International Commission of Missing Persons director, and they would like to help. There's certain free things that we can do. First of all, we have an MDC role of honor. We know the first person who was killed during all the episodes of violence within the MDC. How come we don't have we don't have a list of Gukurahundi victims? As far as I'm aware, I've looked, There are some names in the CCJP report, but we don't have a definitive list of individuals who were killed. Secondly, we due to the development of forensics, there's software that's available freely at the ICMP that they say they're free to share, whereby we need to record what we call ante-mortem data. This is information of an missing person individual. It's either clothing, height, even if we can get at least DNA sample through clothes or through a toothbrush or through a shoe, all this information can be uploaded to the site so that even if the small community groups that do their forensic work correctly, they can have a step further by accounting for those human beings. At the moment, there's no accounting. And now if there's no accounting, which means the historical record of those individuals is lost. It also means if there's any opportunity for any judicial intervention in terms of, because laws change. If we look at South America, they had the same problem. Dictatorship ruled for years, and then they killed loads of people, and they introduced amnesty law to get away from it. But when the political climate changed, those people went to prison. So we need that kind of process in Zimbabwe, whether the government interferes or not. We need victim groups to come together and streamline the process so that it's accountable. At the moment, for me, it's not accountable to a level that satisfies victims. As you know, the case of Charles Thomas versus the government of Zimbabwe that was heard, is it yesterday or the day before yesterday? That, at the moment, supposedly the victims of Gukurahundi are just being represented by the Blue Eye Collective, and whom do they represent? The Blue Eye Collective, it has to be holistic, it has to include everybody. If it doesn't include everybody, it becomes another layer of deception.
Yeah, one of the things when it comes to Gukurahundi in Zimbabwe is one of those sensitive issues, highly, contested by the government. And do you think that it would be easy to actually openly, implement the things that you're talking about without the interference of the government and government feeling that they're being exposed?
Politics is always going to be the elephant in the room. However, there's certain things we can do as citizens, and also there's certain elements that we've got. We've got the National Truth and Reconciliation Act. While it's a very, very light paper, it is an act that mandates the National Truth and Reconciliation Commission to investigate these issues. Yes, by signing this, by President Mnangagwa, by signing that act and talking to collective groups, it's impossible for me personally, and also it's never been done anywhere else in the world, for the perpetrator to superintend the truth and reconciliation process. Mnangagwa had an opportunity when they staged the coup, let's call it a coup. When they staged the coup, he had an opportunity to even apologize and make sure the process is transparent. I was talking to somebody yesterday that he could have easily won a Nobel Peace Prize by making sure that Gukurahundi is on the forefront, and people, because there's processes that the victims of Gukurahundi, they want to do their umbiyiso, they want to do kuruakuva, they want death certificate, they want transfer of properties, and all these other things that need doing. That process could have been earned in accolades, but instead, for me, I think he's playing around with the issue of Gukurahundi, particularly with the Blue Eye Collective. However, if citizens come together, this has been replicated around the world, it can be done. If we streamline the process, if victim groups come together, and if they support each other, yes, it can be done, because nothing lasts forever. We're talking about Mugabe in the past tense. So Gukurahundi is difficult, very, very difficult to approach. And there's always denials, there's still denials, but we need more research, like people like me and others. I'm fortunate enough, I'm in a group of few academics who are very interested in Gukurahundi. I'm in a ZIPRA group, we're doing ZIPRA history. So it's processes like that are very important. Whilst the government can try as much as they can to obfuscate information and deny certain things and be selective in who they talk to, if we do our research, if we do things right, I think we can come up tops.
When it comes to these issues like reburials, exhumations, I believe that the community, the families should be at the center of it all. They need to make the decisions of how it should be done. You're doing your research, you're not definitely on the ground, you are in the away. How does that affect your research when it comes to talking to real victims, families of those people who disappear?
Thanks to the marvel of technology and everything else, I've managed to interview, during my research, I interviewed over 15 victims of Gukurahundi. Some of them I got them through you, some of them are in the UK, and there's dozens of WhatsApp groups. And also technology, like I remember I've managed to track mass graves using satellite, from a hashtag, from a discovery of a mass grave somewhere in Cholocho to somebody telling me the location for me to actually map it. So it's the technology has been very useful. And also it's another exercise that needs to unfold for Gukurahundi to do mapping of all these locations, because we've got 10 provincial heroes acres for people killing during the Liberation War. And there's absolutely nothing for Gukurahundi. And also you're very right in terms of reburial and exhumation. It has to be victim focused. It doesn't have to be necessarily government led, but it has to be victim focused. What do the victims want? But at the moment, these exercises, especially by the Fallen Heroes Trust, are going to make things difficult for us in future to properly identify human remains, because they've been reburied in certain location and given certain names, which they've got nothing to do with.
Yeah, when it comes to missing people in Zimbabwe, it's not only Gukurahundi victims. We've seen other people missing, either going to South Africa or, just people disappear, old age and all those kind of things. In your view, all these issues, how do you think they can be addressed to have a situation whereby, you have a thorough process that actually, looks at these issues of missing people?
Yeah, it's a very complicated matter. I was actually speaking to, there's a lady here in London, who wants to do a Southern Africa missing person task team, so he can coordinate. I've got my nephew who disappeared from South Africa, and we need to know, did she disappear through the border? Was she in Botswana? Was she in Zimbabwe? So there's loads of Zimbabweans who've disappeared, jumping the border and everything else, and there's no coordination between different countries in order to track down those individuals. So the surviving families are in a permanent loss in terms of not knowing what to do and what to search. But there are opportunities. It has to be, we need a Southern Africa task team. I think Botswana has signed up with the International Commission for Missing Persons to try and be part of that nexus of tracing missing people will be missing in Southern African states. And also there's this initiative by one or two academics to bring certain task forces together and have a database of missing people, who've been missing since, some of them since the 1970s.
Yeah, you've been in the UK for almost 20 years now. Do you see yourself coming back to Zimbabwe to do that kind of work?
I'd love to come to Zimbabwe, but political dynamics might prevent certain things. I'm not afraid. I know how they work. So I'd love to, in the right environment, because I'm not doing anything that the government doesn't know. The government actually needs people like me. The National Peace and Reconciliation, I've spoken to one or two commissioners, and they're like, even when Ed Munanga was speaking to the Bilewai Collective, he was asking for a plan. We've got a plan. I've got a plan. I know a few academics who have a plan. So, but unfortunately, because I will stand for the truth, would Ed accommodate people like me who wants to do things right? And it's also, he could endear himself by putting himself forward, by apologizing properly, and also having the process streamlined. And as Magaisa said, Ed, it was very difficult for him to fail after Robert Mugabe. Very difficult. But, I'm not the only person who's got this experience. There are a few other Zimbabweans in different sectors of the economy. I know a guy, the engineer who fixes planes at Manchester Airport in Zimbabwe, every sector has got people like me who've got a niche, who know something about something, but they are now allowed to work in Zimbabwe due to the economics and also the politics.
And lastly, I mean, where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
10 years of now, hopefully I'll be living in a farm, hopefully in a, I'm going to say in a ZANU-PF-free country. But hopefully I'd like to get to Zimbabwe. I've got a plan. I've been talking to loads of people about certain things. I don't have to be there on the ground to be there. You know, there are other people there who can equally do the job. And also I was speaking. It is important that I mentioned my meeting yesterday with the International Commission on Missing Persons. They would like to help. They would like to train certain people. You know, that is an opportunity that if I can contribute that's more than important, because I can have other people doing that and I can move on to something else. But at the moment, that's my focus. 10 years from now, I'll hopefully to be in Zimbabwe teaching somewhere, either at NAST or Midland State University, you know, because I'm hopefully still quite young. You know, I'd like to impart more knowledge. It's better weather there. You know, here we're cramped in, you know, in small houses and everything else. But I would like definitely come back to Zimbabwe and we'd do some work, you know, especially around policing or around forensics. You know, at some point, you know, home is best.
Keith, thank you very much for sharing your experiences and your work when it comes to issue of forensics and archaeology. I know this is an issue that is difficult to talk about, especially when you talk about Kukuraundi, the exhumations. There is a lot of politics at play in Zimbabwe, and a lot has happened. And of course, you know, we know our government has been stalling the process, but you know, you have been researching on these issues, and we hope that you also connect more with people on the ground and you know, get the work going. Thank you very much for your time, and wishing you a very pleasant day.
Thank you.
My name is Zenzele Ndebele, and this was the Breakfast Club.